Hey, so this is the very first episode of Carpe Ingenium, and I figured a good place to start would kind of be talking about the history of my car. I actually originally picked up Smurfette, as was affectionately named by my friend Liz, um, as a daily driver while I worked on my other project car, which at the time was a '92 Subaru Legacy Turbo, which I was as well going to turn into a wide body. However, when I bought this car, it was already swapped, and it turned out that the guy that built it was actually far worse than me and did a absolutely terrible job of it. And I spent so much time trying to fix all the things on the car that were broken already when I got it that I never ended up building my other project car, and this one ended up taking over. On the whole, I'm glad I built an Impreza versus a Legacy. The car's quite a lot lighter. It originally had an EJ20K out of a 98 Type RA, and it's had several engines in it since then. The engine that was in it when I bought it blew up after about 2 months because of an improperly torqued rod bolt, and amongst other problems. And I built several 2.2 liters for it before I finally decided to go with the 3.3. The wide body I had done about a year after I bought the car. I really wanted a wide body. It was actually originally my plan with the Legacy was a wide body, but that never ended up panning out. I just really like the look of them. Not everyone's a fan of this one. I've had the fenders compared to a F350. I don't care. Car hasn't been driven since October right now. It's this engine's still fairly fresh. I just got it in last year. It's not an engine that very many people build due to all the problems and all the kind of custom fabrication you have to do to get it working. Still a long way from being done. The way the car sits right now, it's got the EG33 out of a '92 Subaru SVX. It's been bored out to 3.4 liters with custom Wiseco pistons and air-water intercooler. Right now I'm just running the little tiny Force Performance 20G there. It's I've got a GT40 94R that I'm planning on putting on, but I'm not quite ready for that yet. I got the car running, I think it was in July of last year with the turbo. I got it running without the turbo in I think May. But I had quite a bit of problems at the racetrack with the crankcase ventilation system. It was pushing oil, a lot of oil out of the valve covers. Pretty much every pass it was pushing out about half a liter of oil, which I guess a lot of people would say is excessive. I still ran, and everything was fine. I just kept the oil topped up, and the my awesome catch can here, I kept that drained. But it wasn't anywhere near as fast as I was hoping. Needs a lot of work still. Two of the major projects I'll be doing right away on this program here is I'll be installing a exhaust venturi for the crankcase ventilation system, and moving this radiator to the trunk. It's not really in a good spot right here. Not a lot of room in the front of this engine, and I want to hopefully put the turbo right up there when I put the 20G or when I put the GT40 on. One of my big goals with this car is to have kept it as light as possible, with even with the 6-speed in there and the bigger 6-cylinder engine. I went a little bit crazy with it in some points. All this wiring is scavenged aviation wiring, which is a little bit thinner, and it's got a Teflon coating versus a vinyl coating, which again is thinner, weighs less. And I just went with the absolute minimum gauge everywhere possible and the minimum number of wires possible to keep the weight down. The car originally had a sunroof, and you can see the seam here. If I can get it to focus. I'm getting a better camera soon. But yeah, you can see the seam there where where I cut off the original roof that had the sunroof, and got a roof off an L model which came with no sunroof, and attached that instead, and saved about 40 pounds off the top of the car. Standard stuff as well, like all the carpeting has been removed, heater core has been removed. There's basically nothing underneath the dash except for a bit of wiring. There's no heater box, no fan, no blower motor, no airbags. These quarter panels and widened fenders I had done at a shop in Victoria, BC called Protein Motorsports. The guy there, Phil, was pretty enthusiastic about this project. He did a very good job considering the amount of information I gave him to go on. Just give him a couple of vague pictures of 22B and a couple other guys who've done similar wide bodies. Really great guy to deal with. The engine bay is well, I'm not finished shaving it, but it's well on its way. The clutch master and the brake master both be moved underneath the dash. All the brake lines are underneath the dash. I'm trying to get it so that the only thing in the actual engine bay is the engine itself. The hood is an aluminum hood off a JDM STI. Everything's got to be JDM. Overnight parts from Japan. I actually came up with the name for my channel here, Carpe Ingenium, when I was heading out to the drag strip for the first time with the turbo installed. And after having seized so many engines at the drag strip, I think I'm up to I think I've seized 3 engines at the drag strip. I kind of just went with the closest Latin equivalent I could find to seize the engine, which was Carpe Ingenium. It's not exactly a proper translation, but it's as close as I could get. The whole car is pretty obviously spray bombed. The wide body has never been finished in the 6 years since it's been since it left the shop. It's all still roughed in. You can see all the Bondo marks, heavy sanding marks. I actually semi-crashed this corner here, and one of these days I may paint it properly, but spray paint's really cheap and you can buy it anywhere, and this car's made for just kind of going fast, not necessarily looking good doing it. If you drive fast enough, nobody knows what you look like anyway. The whole driveline of the car is out of a 05 STI. I bought a wrecked one. It was in a rear end collision, and grabbed the whole transmission, rear diff, axles, brakes, jammed it all in here. It all actually fits pretty good. The only thing you need to do is get some custom coilovers, and happen to get a really good deal on a set of cheap Stance GR Plus coilovers. They're not the greatest, but they've stood up for me over the years so far. For anyone who who's never done drag racing, the numbers on my windshield there are from the last race I did, which was the last time I drove the car in October. It's Pro Bracket is the PB, car number 193, and then my dial-in time, which is 8.1 seconds, obviously in the eighth mile, not the quarter. Like I said, the car is nowhere near as fast as it should be, but there's a lot of work coming over the next couple months, and hopefully we'll get it moving the way it should. This car's been on fire 3 times, almost been on fire a whole bunch more. Yeah, don't set your car on fire. I keep a fire extinguisher in it now. Crashed at the racetrack once and kind of crashed it on the street once. The only thing that it hit on the street was itself, though, so I'm not sure if that counts as a crash. So I got some aftermarket ball joints for it, not performance ones, just from the local parts shop. And I didn't really think about it at the time. I would now after this happened, but they came with nylock nuts, which are actually I should have one here I can show you. So this is a nylock. So basically, on the nylock, that little gray ring at the top of the nut there, that is a nylon locking washer. So what that is when you run the nut on, it threads that little nylon ring and over the bolt, and it locks the bolt in place so that it can't wiggle loose on itself, which is fine. It's not a terrible way of doing things in general. The problem is with my ball joints your ball joints are fairly close to your brake rotors, which put out a lot of heat. So it ended up melting the nylon in the nut, and then the nut backed off because it no longer had anything to knock it, and the ball joints are under constant rotary motion every time you turn your steering wheel. So it slowly backed out, and I didn't notice, and I took a friend for a little drive. And we went over a railroad track, and it unloaded the suspension. The ball joint popped out, and the tire kind of slammed backwards in the wheel well and crunched my fender, which is kind of why I didn't make them out of fiberglass, because I kind of just beat it back into shape as best as I could and hit it with some spray paint, and she was good to go again. This is not the original hood scoop on this car, or at least not for this hood. As you can see, it kind of is sitting a little bit funny. I had an incident with a friend on a closed course with a professional driver a few years back, in which a large amount of speed was involved, and my original hood scoop ended up coming off. It pulled the bolts or the studs right out of the plastic, and it vanished. It smashed into the windshield. It actually didn't break the windshield, but it left paint on it, which was kind of impressive in its own right. This car has been on flat deck trucks a lot. Aside from the 6 or possibly 7 engines that have seized or otherwise had catastrophic failures, or at least extreme failures. I've had full coolant dumps. I've never had an oil dump, but the coolant dump was bad. It was actually on the original engine that came in the car. The gentleman who put it together decided it would be a very good idea to run the front coolant line that goes directly in front of the exhaust crosspipe. Replace the metal one with a silicon one, which then caught fire and let all my coolant out. I used to have exhaust wrap on the headers. That caught fire. Yep. The original ECU that was in this car had a bit of a conniption, and it started cycling all the relays and solenoids at random. And I finally got it to stop and behave normally again. Then I tried to turn over the engine and it wouldn't turn over. And after doing a bit of figuring out, I realized that it was because the injectors had been cycling as well as everything else. And so I pulled the spark plugs, and of course the cylinders were all completely full of fuel. And yeah, seeing as I can only think about one thing per day, and I had already solved the problem of the misfiring solenoids and relays, I then proceeded to turn over the engine to get the remaining fuel out of the cylinders, without disconnecting the ignition coils, so the engine turned over and ejected a large amount of fuel-air mixture directly onto the ignition coils, which were firing. So it caught fire again. A lot of the undercoating caught fire while I was doing the engine bay because I didn't scrape it all off properly first. Yep. So yeah, that's 3 fires. I'm sure there's more. There'll probably be more as well. The washer nozzles are just for show. They don't they don't connect to anything. The stereo is pretty much just for show as well. You can't really hear it over the road noise. It's not even the exhaust that's loud, it's just the noise that the car makes just from driving. Sometimes it actually feels like your head is just, like your ear is being dragged across the surface of the road. It's a fantastic noise. I really encourage everybody to go out right now, remove all your sound deadening material and change out all your bushings for either solid mounts or polyurethane. It's a great way to really hate your life when you're going on long road trips. I drove this thing to Portland last year. That's it was about a 6 or 7 hour drive from where I live. I definitely wanted to die a few times. Like I seriously was just considering pulling over and not living anymore. The interior in this car is it's kind of a mixture between like kind of nice stuff and just awful, like seriously terrible. The seats I really like. They're JDM version 7 seats. They're like ridiculously comfortable. They hold you really well. And then I've got my, oh, you can't see it, but I've got my custom roof liner. I'll have to show you guys later, which was I made to match the seats, but it's now just falling down because I just glued it to cardboard in the same shape as the roof, and yeah, that didn't work. Seeing as I didn't have a heater anymore, I decided to turn my heater vents into a gauge cluster. I started building it about 5 years ago, and then I got to the point where the gauges fit, so I stopped because now it worked. So why would I finish it? When you look at it from outside the car, it looks actually pretty awesome, but then when you look at it up close, it's just like offensive with the amount of unfinished. Just awful. Most of the trim is either missing or broken because I'm not buying new trim. Like, why would I buy new trim? Honestly, I should probably just remove the entire interior of the car, but I kind of like having it because if I ever do get pulled over, it's kind of it's less of a heat score if you have a full-ish interior. It doesn't look like you're some idiot street racer with his bolt-in cage, living his life a quarter mile at a time. I actually live my life an eighth mile at a time. When I was back in Victoria, it was 384 feet at a time because they have a 384-foot drag strip because reasons. That is exactly the same length as no other track ever, because who has a 384-foot track? Wrong though. It was a blast, even though the length of the track makes no sense. It was still a ton of fun to go out there, and I went out there all the time in the summer. Speaking of things that do nothing, pretty much everybody who gets in my car asks me about the big red missile switch, which does nothing. It's literally just there. I thought it looked cool. I was super stoked to get these wheels. These are 5 Ziegen FN01R-C, the hot version. And then I didn't take care of them, so now they're fucked. So, yeah, take care of your wheels. If you run racing pads, or at least like high-performance street pads, you have to keep your wheels clean, otherwise the pad dust will destroy your wheels. Just FYI. Oh, also don't spray paint your calipers because the paint just like runs off from brake fluid. And then it just looks worse than if you didn't paint them.